Hey guys, my name is Lilly and today I want to give you a full presentation of the APO-1 survival knife. Stay tuned. Alright folks, so this is my self-designed survival knife and it took me about 3 years to get where it is right now. This is the latest version of the APO-1 and I realized that I never have made a full review of every feature of this knife. Now before I go and show you the details of this knife and what my thoughts were when I designed this knife, I first want to talk about the past a little bit before I designed this knife. So as you guys know, I'm a survivalist and I post survival and camping videos on YouTube, and for that you need a good knife, of course. And before this knife, I had many different knives. Some of them were really good, some of them were not so great, but there was always 1, 2 or 3 things that I disliked about those knives. It was either the steel, or sometimes it was the handle, sometimes it was the sheath that I didn't like, or just the overall design. And I needed a little bit of time, to spend with knives that did not fit me, to know and to learn what I want in a survival knife. So then with my year-long experience with using several different knife brands, I then realized what is important for me and what features I wanted to have on my knife. And yeah, then I started to design the APO-1 and later on I upgraded it to the APO-1, which is this knife here. This knife, by the way, is not a best-selling knife on CanadianPreparedness.com. So if you go on Canadian Preppers website, which is an awesome store, by the way, and if you go on knives and if you search by best-selling, you will see that this is the #1 best-selling knife on his website. All right, so now let's take a closer look at the APO-1 and what my thoughts were when I designed this knife. All right, so this is the knife. It's pretty long actually, and it has a blade length of almost 15 centimeters now, which is quite a good length for a survival knife. And you definitely want to have a longer blade for batoning, because with a shorter blade, batoning is always a little bit tricky. So this is why I think that a survival knife should at least have 14 centimeters length, and mine is almost 15. So that's really sufficient enough to baton with a knife. Of course, you can always design a knife much longer, but the question is, do you really need an extra long blade? Because then the knife is only getting heavier, and some people prefer that, but I think that this length is just perfect. Okay, now let's take a closer look at the blade itself. So as you can see, it's a flat saber grind, which means that the grind starts here about 1/3 from the back end, and then the flat grind starts and goes down to the edge. So this is a typical flat saber grind, and I like it because the thickness stays the same until here, which makes the blade really stable, and you want to have a very stable blade for batoning. There are several different grinds that you can buy knives in, of course, one of which is the flat grind. So with a flat grind, the grind would go from here all the way up here, but those knives, although they cut a little bit better, they will not be as stable as the saber grind. So I wanted to have a thick blade down to here, and I think a saber grind is the perfect grind for a survival knife. Now, I did not use a false wedge up here because I wanted to keep a very thick tip, and this way the tip won't break so easily or bend over easily. Now, a false wedge would have been great if you want to make a knife for stabbing, but I believe that this feature is not so important for a survival knife. If you make a soldier knife, then I would design a false wedge, of course. But for a survival knife, I rather want to have a thick tip instead of a thin stabbing tip. Now the back of the knife here is very sharp, and that's what you need to use a fire steel. And you should not use the fire steel with the edge of your blade, because then that would mess up the heat treatment. Okay, so as you can see, the knife is really thick. It's 4.8 millimeters. And it also has a thumb rail here. So if you are holding the knife, you can place your thumb here and then you have a better grip for fine carving. Now the edge itself, the very edge or the secondary bevel, is a convex edge. So it's not flat. And I really wanted to have this convex edge because it's the most stable edge that you can get. So a flat edge would be like this. And it's easy to make, but it's not as stable as the convex one, which has a little bit of a curve going on. So I recommend that you sharpen this knife in a convex edge. And there are several different sharpening methods how you can achieve that. And I've made 2 very good videos about how you can get this edge done. But of course, if you don't like the convex edge or if you want to just sharpen the flat edge, that's okay too. So you can change the grind, but the standard is that it's coming with a convex edge. Now the steel here is APO 8 and it's a Japanese steel, which is very flexible and robust, and it rather bends than breaking. And let's keep in mind, guys, that this is a survival knife. So you want to have a stable knife that doesn't break. If you break your knife off here, that would be very devastating. And I've seen many videos of knives that broke off while batoning or while doing other survival tasks. And I've never experienced or seen that a knife with this steel in this thickness has broken off. And I'm not saying that this is impossible, but it's very unlikely. And in a survival situation, I want to trust my knife with my life. So I rather have a tough steel. And the Rockwell hardness is 57 ±1. So it's a medium hardness. It's not soft, but it's also not too hard. And that was exactly what I was looking for. Now I believe that APO 8 is the perfect steel for survival knives. It's also a stainless steel, so you won't get rusty spots easily. But there's also one downside. And the downside is that you have to sharpen this steel more often than other steels. So if you compare this edge retention to, let's say, D2 tool steel, you will have to sharpen APO 8 twice more often. So that's what you have to be aware of if you buy this knife. But at least you can sharpen this blade here. So APO 8 is very easy to sharpen. You don't need a diamond sharpener. It maybe takes 1 minute longer than carbon steel. So why did I not choose a carbon steel for my survival knife? I gotta say that it's really hard to keep carbon steels rust free, and I don't think that's a good choice for a survival knife where you might not have the time to take care of your knife, or where you might not have a dry towel to dry off the knife. And I've seen many pictures of carbon steels which got rusty after the first use, and it even happened to me that I ruined some blades because I forgot to, dry off the blade. And yeah, in a survival situation, you definitely don't think about, taking care of your knife so much. So this is why I have chosen the stainless steel here. All right, so this is the blade. And now let's come to the handle. The handle was much more difficult to design than the blade because, as you can see, it's a 3D handle. And it took me several prototypes to get this done where it is today. So as you can see, the thickness varies. So here it's thicker, then it's getting thinner, here it's getting thicker again, thinner and thicker. And I especially put my focus on the thickness of the back of the handle here. I wanted that this gets really thick, and also I came out with the handle here a little bit, and that has one reason. I wanted to be able to take the knife with only 2 fingers and use it as a chopper, and with this nose that's coming out and with the back end which is getting thicker, you have a really good grip on the knife and you won't lose the knife when you're chopping. So this way you have a lot of leverage and you can chop much better than if you're just holding the knife like this. So for carving and batoning, I would hold the knife like this, And for chopping, you just go back into the extended grip and you hold the knife like this, okay? Like that. So it took me quite a while to design this handle. Also here in the front, you can see proper finger protection here. That's important so that your hand is protected from accidentally slipping over onto the blade. So I've recently added the green liner handle scales because it looks great, I believe. There are no hard spots on the handle. So this has been sanded down to the tang by hand actually. If you take a look at the knife, there's no seam, no gap, no corners. So the handle scales are cut out with CNC and they are made a little bit bigger than the tang. And then a worker at the factory is sanding down the handle scales to the tang by hand. And this is why this knife is a little bit more expensive, because of this sanding process, which takes 20 to 25 minutes per knife. So this is done by hand and you have no corners or other spots which hurt your hand. So this is a very ergonomical handle, and with some knife producers you see that they make the handle scale smaller than the tang. Then you have the small step which is going down, and those knives really hurt in the hand. So I do not recommend buying knives where the handle scale is smaller than the tang, because that really hurts. Okay, next on I want to show you the end pommel of the handle, which is basically an emergency hammer with a lanyard hole. So if you want to, you can attach a closed lanyard and then you can hold the knife better when you're chopping. And even if you're not attaching a lanyard, you can use this as an emergency hammer. You can smash off limpets of a rock or smash nuts, or maybe you can even smash a window of a car. So this is a really good emergency hammer, and I've designed this so that it sticks out a little bit. It's a little bit away from the handle scales, so that if you use this as a hammer, the handle scales don't get damaged. Also, with some knives you see that they have a point here at the back side, and those are great for smashing windows. But actually, if you make a point, first of all, you have a risk of injury. So if you have this knife on your belt and let's say you actually bump into the back, you would have a serious injury if you have this triangle at the back, a glass breaker. So it's a injury risk, and because of the higher risk of injury, I did not want to have a glass breaker at the back. So I wanted to have this flat, and the great thing about this having flat is that you can take the knife in reverse grip, and now you can put on your thumb onto the handle. And this way you can stab in reverse like this, and your thumb is not getting hurt because of a glass breaker. So this is why I have designed the end as it's right now, and I think that's a really good solution. Also, the lanyard hole is big enough that you can even feed paracord through 2 times. Now the material of the handle scale is K.n.i.f.e, and I believe that K.n.i.f.e is the best material. It's a compound of glass fiber and epoxy glue, and this is the most stable material that you can get for a handle scale, and this will last you forever. Okay, now let's talk about the sheath a minute. So this here is a tactical nylon injected sheath, which comes in black. And you can see that it has a lot of holes and rivets. So you can use some cordage and wrap it around the holes to make sure that you have some cordage or paracord with you. And then here, this is the belt loop. So it comes with a tactical double secured molly webbing belt loop. So you can mount this onto your backpack if it's molly compatible, or onto your belt without having to take your belt off. And then it comes with double snap buttons for extra security so that your knife doesn't fall out of the sheath. Alright, so this is the APO-1 in the nylon injected sheath. And what is the general purpose of this knife? The purpose is that you have a one item cutting tool which does all of the survival tasks for you. So with this knife you can carve, you can, gut animals, you can make some shavings with the bag, you can use a fire steel, you can do some chopping, you can do some batoning. Now, where are the limitations of this knife? Well, it's not an axe. You can use it and chop down trees and it will work, but of course an axe works better. You can do some carving with this knife and it will do a good job, but of course a carving knife by the company Mora with an extra thin blade is going to work better. But those thin blades, they are not made to baton and those break easily if they are stressed out too much. So in my opinion, a survival knife should be very thick and also it should be full tang. And my knife is full tang all the way through. It's not skeletonized. I've seen a couple of videos where people buy supposedly full tang knives, but then in the end they break because they are skeletonized quite a lot. And that's not the case with my knife. My knife is full tang all the way through. So this was the most important thing for me. Yes, a thick knife is not going to cut as well as a Mora knife. And yes, this is no axe. So of course an axe is doing a better job at chopping down trees than this knife. But with this knife it's possible to chop down trees. With smaller knives it's not that easy. If you don't have any other options left, this is a one tool option. Of course, if I have the choice, I would like to have a saw in a survival situation, a hatchet, a folding saw, some other tools, a smaller knife, a fishing knife, a filleting knife. Of course, it's better to have more tools on you, but if you don't have those tools, then this knife is my solution for a one-item cutting tool. Alright guys, so this is my survival knife, which I really love. And if you want to get one, then make sure that you visit all of the links in the description below. Stay tuned till next time.